Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and this is Poland Daily Culture. We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are the members of human race, and human race is filled with passion. Those are famous words from Dead Poets Society, and today, yes, we are going to talk about poetry, Polish poetry in English translation. With me in the studio is Julia Wilde.
Thank you for having me.
And you are a PhD candidate at the Warsaw University in literature, but also a translator yourself.
Yes, that's true.
And I would say those times right now, they're not good for poetry, are they?
Well, I think that it's become even more difficult for poetry to become a part of our everyday lives. And I would say that we are even more keen on stories, and it's really hard to convey a story in a poem. I don't know if you agree with me, but I think it's a time of stories, not really of thoughts and reflections.
That's very true, I would say, because we start to be very keen on, I would say, seasons. And so are there very long books which goes in many chapters or many parts, as Harry Potter, for example, or the Games of Thrones, or long films and seasons which are also, they feel our need for storytelling. But it wasn't always the same thing. Like, a novel is a very modern piece of literature. Previously, the poetry was ruling utterly, and in a very long versions, as of course as Homer did. But I was still worth mentioning and reading poetry, because it tells a lot about our emotions, and it tells a lot about human beings, and it's beautiful. And if a thing of beauty lasts forever, its loveliness increases, it never passes into nothingness. And John Keats said once. But today I would like to talk about one of the greatest verse spinner in the 20th century in Poland, whose name was Julian Tuwim. And when you read Tuwim, what's the first thought?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, because he's so complex. There are so many moods, there are so many sides, so many aspects of his poetry. It depends really on which part you are looking at, because he's widely known for his poetry for children, and most of Polish children knows at least one of his poems. But he also could be very romantic or very vulgar, as a matter of fact. He was also a brilliant satirist and a great lyricist. So there is always something that you can find in Tuwim for yourself.
Yes, and also he combines two elements, because he was a Polish Jew. So there is this Polishness there, and I would say there are not many people, I would even say in the whole Polish literature history, who were possessing the power of words as he did, because for him, like, the words just flow, and he does everything with them. I would say maybe Mickiewicz was, to compare with him in the same way, and Leśmian.
For sure, yes, but I think it's very different in a sense that Tuwim is very innovative in the way he plays with words. We can really see at times that he was inspired by Leśmian in the way he plays, he creates new words. For sure, he has some elements that he inherited from Mickiewicz, but he is not afraid to try new things. He even called himself the first Polish futurist, but not in the sense that he really belonged to the school of poetry, but that he was looking into the future and trying to find new ways to express yourself.
Yes, because we have to say that Tuwim was one of the members of Scamander group, along with Jarosław Iwaszkiewicz, for example, and Antoni Słonimski. at least one was Jewish as well.
Yes, Jan Lechoń, Słonimski as well, yes. And another member of this commander group was Kazimierz Wierzyński as well.
And they tried to do experimental things with language, use it differently. And what we treat right now as traditional a little bit, it wasn't that traditional for them. It
wasn't.
But in those times, in the times of Scamander, writing a poem, it was a big deal. I mean, they were fighting with each other. There were scandals about it. They were sitting in a cafe, and people were really attracted by what they said, and they were waiting for new poems. Was it not like this?
Yes. I'm wondering, isn't it because of the radio, the television wasn't there yet at all. The television was developing slowly, but words were still more appealing to some extent than images. So it's a very difficult question. I think that for a long time, because of the partition of Poland, words were the way to preserve our uniqueness, our culture, and we paid more attention to them. And at the same time, words are easier to hide, so to speak, right? To smuggle them somehow,
yes.
right?
Because you can smuggle books,
yes.
but you can't really...
Or you can even whisper a poem. And remember, we should remember that back then people had a much better memory and they could memorize verses. We wouldn't be able to do this because we are constantly struggling with the amount of information, and we are overwhelmed almost.
So like in the Greek times when they were educated in Homer and could say by heart the huge part of Odyssey.
Yeah, probably, right.
Yes, so with Tuvim, just to wrap up, I would say, could you read few first verses of one of his most famous children's poems?
Of course, with pleasure. The locomotive. A big locomotive has pulled into town, heavy, humongous, with sweat rolling down, a plump jumbo olive. Huffing and puffing and panting and smelly, fire belches fall from her fat cast iron belly. Poof, how she's burning. Oof, how she's boiling. Poof, how she's churning. Huff, how she's toiling. She's fully exhausted and all out of breath, yet the coalman continues to stoke her to death.
Yes, and since we don't want to exhaust the topic totally in this part, we welcome and invite you to continue the story of Julian Tuvim, and thank you very much for being today with us.